Now the topic for today is the tea house. So Janet Beardsley, will you please introduce today's speaker for what I consider to be one of the 7 wonders of Boulder?
The Dushanbe Tea House, a gift to the city of Boulder from our sister city in Tajikistan, is one of Boulder's most dazzling architectural attractions. Here to tell us about the fascinating history of this gem is Leslie Durgan, the mayor of Boulder, and at the time of the tea house's completion. Leslie is someone who embodies Mahatma Gandhi's statement that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. In addition to her 8 years of service on city council and as mayor, she has served on numerous boards of nonprofit organizations and has been the executive director of 4 local educational and human service agencies. She currently serves on the boards of directors of Emergency Family Assistance Association, Better Boulder, and the Fraser Meadows Retirement Center. Leslie says of herself, "I am a classic example of a person failing at retirement. But I keep trying to have more fun and fewer obligations." So here's my dear friend, Leslie Durgan.
Thank you, Janet. It's nice to be back here. And I am going to do what I think is going to be a very spirited romp through the history of the Dushanbe Tea House, and also to focus on some of the architectural details that really make our tea house special. If you're like me, I listen intently when somebody gives me driving directions. I get in the car, can't remember a damn thing. And so I figured that this is a chance really to focus on some of the pictures that make Dushanbe Tea House special, in hopes that when you go there, and I hope you will, I'm sure many of you have been there, you will see some of the architectural design that really is stunning in our tea house. This is a painting by Barbara Hoffman in 1998. But before I dig in on the tea house history, I really want to thank Jancy Campbell, Catherine Barth, and my daughter-in-law, Crystal Fitch, for helping to put this presentation together. You would think for something this magnificent, there would be easily accessible pictures, and we'd all be wrong. We had a hell of a time, but we got it. So I also want to note that many of my comments are drawn from a report that Catherine wrote, Boulder-Dushanbe Tea House Historic Context and Survey Report. So, briefly, coming out of the Cold War, there was an opportunity for people to establish sister city relationships with the former Soviet Union. Because of Gorbachev and Glasnost, it was a period in which the tensions had reduced somewhat. And a number of people here in Boulder decided to reach out to people, and particularly elected officials in Dushanbe, to see if we could create a sister city relationship. Dushanbe is the capital of Tajikistan. It's bordered by Afghanistan, which is to the south, China on the east, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan on the north and the west. Has a mountainous topography, sort of like Boulder's, educational and scientific institutions, although as a city it's quite a bit larger than ours. So the city council, mayor at that time, this took 3 mayors, by the way, in Boulder to get this thing done. Mayor Akramov came in 1987 and announced that Boulder would be the recipient of a tea house from Dushanbe. None of us knew what that meant, and we certainly learned over time. It was accepted by the Boulder City Council in 1989 with the understanding that no public money would be used for the tea house, and that accepting it did not imply that we agreed with or approved of the Soviet government. Typical of Boulder, for the next 10 years, we discussed, we debated locations where the sister city should be located. And that was the time that I was mayor, and I will tell you, except that JCC was not yet established this too would have been considered. It was unbelievable, the places that we looked at. The sister city people raised the money that we thought was going to be necessary to bring the tea house here. And craftsmen in Dushanbe actually built the tea house and its contents. The Martinellis, Lenny and Sarah Martinelli, who run a number of restaurants, including Chautauqua and Boulder, were ultimately selected to run the tea house. And finally, we approved the site on 13th between Arapahoe and Canyon, which is where the tea house is located. I will tell you, we thought it was going to be great. EPA came in and said, no, you can't build there. So all the banks withdrew their approval of loans, and then EPA came back and said, oh yeah, we were wrong, you can build there. By that time, we had no money. I mean, it just was one of those back and forth, long stories that ultimately, as you can see, landed the tea house in Boulder. I'll tell you more about that as we go on. Tea house opened in 1998. So quickly, tea houses function as community centers in many areas of Central Asia. Men, traditionally, now women as well, gather to play chess, conduct business, meet with friends, and discuss events and issues. They play an essential role in the culture of that community, more so than our coffee shops. The Persian designs that I really want to focus on as you look at our tea house will be familiar to those of you that collect or have Oriental rugs, but you will see, if I can do it, the arch. What am I doing wrong here? Maybe that, yeah. The arch, or mihrab, which focuses the attention toward Mecca, and then arches that are repeated, geometric forms, very colorful mosaics that are really quite stunning and identify really what Islamic art has come to be. Here is a tower. Again, you can see beautiful mosaics. So we were excited when we saw that this kind of thing might be coming, but we really didn't know what we were getting. We didn't know if this was going to be what we would receive in Boulder. This is a Soviet-style tea house, and you will see the beautiful, beautiful ceiling with heavily painted, highly decorative coffers, or what they're called, and then this mosaic and columns, three very traditional parts of architecture in tea houses, but even with the very stark kind of tea house that came in the Soviet period. This is the tea house, historic part of the tea house that does exist. There are a number of them in Dushanbe, and again, you can see the heavily designed and colored coffers and ceilings. Well, what were we going to get? We didn't know. Some of us, myself included, thought the tea house was going to be about the size of the arch that is created, that goes from baseline up to Chautauqua. Other people thought it was going to be a little kiosk. Some other people thought, well, no, I think it's a little bigger than that. We had no idea what we were getting. So from 1988 to 1990, there were 5 woodworkers, 7 master craftsmen, and 30 other carpenters who actually built the tea house in Dushanbe, dismantled it, put it into 200 crates, 200 crates, 2,300 pieces, and sent it to Boulder. This is what it looked like. I got a call from the city architect, and he said, Mayor Durgan, you got to get over here. So I went to the wastewater plant was the only place that was big enough, and we opened the crates, and this is what we found. 2,300 pieces with not one word in English, no instructions about how to build the thing, and they did, however, include the tools that they believed we needed to build the tea house. It's true. And a screwdriver. That was it. No electrical tools, no instruments that gave us a hint of what we were getting. So thankfully, the city architect, Glenn McGee, is a man of enormous adventure and humor, and he just dove in to the whole thing. Luckily, in addition, part of the agreement was that Dushanbe would send a couple of the people who had actually helped build the tea house, and this man who is looking at a column but really is the plaster ceramicist. And thank goodness they came, although they did not speak much English at all. And again, luckily for us in the tea house, there was a carpenter in Gold Hill who read and spoke Farsi. Now really, what kind of luck is that? But it turns out that we were able to put together a construction team that would then build the tea house. I'm going to quickly then shift to some of the key architectural elements that are part of the tea house. And I will go fairly quickly here. But you will see on the left a historic tile, and the colors are beautiful blues and greens and turquoises, and very traditional. There is a vase full of flowers and some of the geometric forms that are common in the, let's see if I can do this so I can see, common in the tea house. For ours, our Boulder Tea House, we received this kind of magnificent mosaic tile. In fact, there are 8 of them that are built again with that mirab design, and very typical in Islamic art. There is no person that is featured, but there's fruit, there are flowers, there are butterflies, there are birds and others. Each one of the 8 panels was built by hand, fired, dismantled, brought here. They're all different, and they are, oddly enough, because we were concerned about vandalism, on the outside of the tea house. Another example. And you will see 2 on the front of the tea house, and then on the north wall of the tea house. When you go, I really encourage you, give yourself a couple extra minutes and walk around the tea house and look at these. They're absolutely stunning. What else typical in a tea house? This is a tea house in Dushanbe, modern, but you will see the highly decorative, what we call coffers or ceiling panels, I don't know what else to call them, with geometric forms, highly decorative painting and bright colors. And our tea house, here are 2 of the examples of the coffers that were built. There are 14 of them in our tea house. They go on the inside of the perimeter of the tea house. Every coffer is different. Particularly, there are 3 of, whoops, did the wrong thing there. Hang on a minute here. There are 3 of them that are octagonal, and you can walk inside and look at them. I might mention quickly, the tea house is a public building. It's owned by the city of Boulder, and all citizens are welcome to walk in and look at it. It's a little awkward because it functions as a restaurant as well, but it is a public building, and you are allowed to go in and take pictures. Okay. These are cornices and the facets that go along under the roof of our tea house. I mean, really, such magnificent artistry. Another design element very common are columns. They are designed to each be unique. They have both a functional and a decorative purpose, and they're designed to look like a grove of trees reaching to heaven. And so we have a funny story about our columns. They each were made by hand. Again, no electrical tools, all by hand, all unique. They tried to find a cedar tree in Dushanbe or Tajikistan and couldn't to make the columns. And so Moscow actually issued what they called a military emergency, which enabled them to get a cedar tree from Lake Baikal in Siberia and bring it to get the columns made. They're really absolutely stunning. Here's a close-up of a couple of them. And then a picture of our tea house looking toward the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, where you can get the sense of the height and reaching toward heaven of the columns. Next is a design element that I think is quite unique, and I think it's pronounced ganch kori. Am I right, Catherine? Close enough. These are the plaster carvings that were made specially for our tea house. They are through a complex process of layers of paint and then layers of plaster. They design and then carve this plaster and then polish it. And it really is almost like a lace or filigree design. This is a picture of the interior of the tea house. You can see the plaster carvings there, another picture there, that creates really a sense of light and airiness. And throughout the tea house, there are carved plaster panels that recognize people who made the tea house successful. Vern Syro, I really want to reach out and talk about. He's an architect in Boulder, and he understood some of what we're getting, much more than the rest of us, and was instrumental in making the tea house comply with Boulder building codes, to have ADA accessibility. He designed a kitchen that was adjacent to and connected but a separate building from the tea house, and he also knew enough about historic preservation criteria nationally and locally that the tea house has been landmarked, not only exterior, interior. Very unusual. Thank you, Catherine Barth. If you want something done, this is your woman, I'll tell you. Okay, operating the tea house. We decided, because the EPA had first said you can't build there, and all the banks withdrew their loans, that we needed to borrow some money from the city of Boulder, but again, we had to repay it. This was one of Tim Honey, our city manager's inventive solutions to this problem. And so we decided to run the tea house as a restaurant, not just a tea house, and serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is the bar in the tea house, and you can see all of the teas, but you'll also notice that there's some wine along with it. And the money that comes from here went to repay the city of Boulder's loans. Also included in the gift were, this is called a top sham. It's a bench where you can sit. And it's absolutely stunning, but I will tell you it is simply uncomfortable, and particularly if you're a person of a certain age, lying there trying to drink tea is a bit of a challenge. The kids like it, however. But the tea house people also included tables and stools as part of the gift. They really, except for butter knives, they sent everything that could possibly be needed. It was just stunning. Finally, the last design element I want to focus on are what are called the Seven Beauties. And these are statues that surround the fountain. Traditionally, in a tea house, the fountain would be sunk, but we couldn't do that because of safety issues. Ours is elevated, and there is a figure in the middle and then 7 statues of women, all of whom but one are carrying water, which represents, of course, life. Each of the 7 beauties, they're called, tells tales of love and virtue. They represent the 7 areas of the known world at the time, and were brought in the traditional poem to be brides of the pre-Islamic ruler Bahram Gur. They really are stunning. When I heard we were getting these, I thought, oh dear God, don't make them be naked. That's all, don't let them. By that time, everything about the tea house had felt like it was a bit of a challenge, and I thought, that's all I need. 7 naked women. But of course, I should have known better because it's Islamic, and they are, of course, dressed. This is not really an Islamic tradition here, but that is part of our tea house. And of the 7 beauties, nobody's figured out which one represents which part of the known world. So it really is kind of a fun mystery Here are two of the examples of the women. And finally, a picture of the inside of the tea house with, as you can see, the coffers, the design around the perimeter inside, the columns, and the tea. How many of you have been to the tea house? Wonderful. That's great. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through a couple of quick design elements. Because water is so important in a tea house, we located our tea house next to the Boulder Creek or the irrigation ditch. And one of the design elements that has been added, this is a modern panel done by someone, I think, in Boulder, Catherine, yeah? And it sits on the bridge that links the tea house to the bike path. And also, there are panels that are in the tiles that are inset into the sidewalk, quoting poetry, talking about the brevity of life and love. Again, it's worth taking some extra time now that we've done this. And finally, the last design element is a rose garden. It had to have a garden because it signified paradise. And the rose garden features 50 different kinds of roses that would also be grown in Dushanbe. Garden designed by Jim Knopf, many of you know, and Harlequin Gardens provided the roses. So that is a very, very quick overview of our Boulder Tea House. I will tell you that in response, it took another 10 years. We gave the citizens of Dushanbe a cyber cafe. It doesn't even begin to match the artistry and beauty of this. In fact, I'm a little embarrassed about it, but there it is. That we're not the only ones. City of Dushanbe debated for about 10 years about where to locate the cyber cafe, but it is up and running and serves as a community center in Dushanbe and also as a children's library. So, depending on time, Jancy isn't jumping up and jumping at me, so no. Any questions?
We do have questions. I'm going to take a question online first from Merrill.
Yes, thank you so much for speaking to our club. I agree with Chad. It's one of the 7 wonders of Boulder, if not all of Colorado, if not the entire country. So we are so proud of the tea house. My question is, given that we've had this terrible pandemic, how is the restaurant managed during this time?
The restaurant is open. It's back open. It's serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner again. It, like all restaurants in Boulder, had some challenges. But they are back open. A number of young people, Lenny Martinelli put to work painting and cleaning the tea house when it was closed. So it's back to its usual spectacular beauty. John Kotke, I think, has a question. Hi.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, John.
So particularly regarding the external components of it, with the kind of harsh weather that we have here in Colorado, what was done to kind of preserve, to make sure that the color doesn't fade from those amazing panels? I'm just astounded. It seems overwhelming to me that somebody would have to repaint or try to repair those at some point in time. So
I can answer part of that. I bet Catherine can answer the rest. And that is that unlike tea houses in Tajikistan, which also has challenging weather, ours with Vern's High Rose help include windows to protect some of that, but it doesn't address the exterior tiles. And Catherine, what is done? Do you know to protect the color?
Right up to this point, the one attempt to put a coating on some of the paint in the overhanging roof did not work very well. And in fact, that particular coating magnified the sun, and so it accelerated the damage. The tiles seem to be doing quite well. I have noticed what seems to be a little fading in the colors in like 20 some years. I think the tiles have been doing well. I haven't noticed that any water has gotten in behind them for the freeze-thaw damage we can have. One of the benefits of landmarking the tea house, and it was quite a project, but it's landmarked interior and exterior. And the advantage of that means that the city can ask for money, and we can go for grants to do various repairs or conservation. Right now, we have a painting conservator who is actually going and testing all the different paints, and I think it'll all be good.
Okay, other questions quickly?
I just wanted to really quickly add that we have had artists from Tajikistan to repaint the up under the top of the roof of the building. Paid for by City Council or the tea house.
Thank you. We're going to go to a question online from Nancy Chin-Wagner.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you very much for being a part of the Boulder Rotary. This is fascinating. And yes, I agree. It's a seventh wonder of the world. It's beautiful. Question for you is, I noticed that when you took the shot from the tea house in Tajikistan, it had a second floor balcony. Why wasn't the one here in Boulder built taller for a second balcony?
The one that I showed was what's called a more Soviet-era designed tea house. And it was designed purposely by people in that time to make it look impressive, make it look serious, part of the Soviet architecture. I think it also, frankly, helped culturally because the women would be upstairs and men downstairs. So that's why. Thank God, Nancy, we did not get a two-story one because that would have taken another 10 years.
Leslie, I, along with Joe Riddle, took a course from the Master Carvers to help subsidize their living expenses. And I'd like to point out that there was master painter, master person that did the plaster carvings, and these were wood carvers. And when you look at all the different flowers and stuff in there, they were carved into the wood too and then painted. So it's very intricate. If you really need to go there and look at it closely to see it.
Yeah.
I have no question.
You can walk in and be overwhelmed by the beauty of the whole thing. It's really worth taking time, which is why I did this, to spend the time to look at the detail. It is remarkable.
So obviously it took a tremendous amount of time and effort and lots of people to put it together. Who funded it? And do you all have a sense of how long it took the artisans to create the work that ultimately became the tea house here? Yeah, they worked for 2 years in Dushanbe to create the tea house in detail. And as I say, they designed not only the building itself, but all of the art that went inside it. And when they shipped it here and we started putting it together, it came within 1/4 of an inch tolerance in terms of square, far more detailed and perfect than we in America traditionally adopt as one of our carpentry standards. The artists were here for about 2.5, 3 months. But of course, there was all sorts of foundation work that had to be done and building code work to build the tea house up. One of the big concerns in locating it there was that if the Boulder Creek flooded, it would come water careening down canyon. Then we had this report. I remember reading it and going, come on, but I didn't say that. The water miraculously would turn right near Central Park and rejoin Boulder Creek, missing the tea house. I thought, when's the last time water read computer design? But 2013, we didn't have any problems at all.
I actually have 2 questions. One is, how are the concessions awarded? And then the second one is, are you aware of any other Tajik architecture in the country, or is this the only example of it?
Okay. There was a request for proposal that was issued, and a number of restaurateurs submitted bids, created proposals, and as I recall, a citizens committee reviewed them all and selected the Martinellis, and they've been at it for 20-something years. They really run a wide variety of different kinds of restaurants. Other Tajik architecture, there are 2 other tea houses in the United States, one in Rhode Island and one in Virginia. Nothing like ours. Very small, modest, beautiful, but nothing that begins to compare with ours. I'm not aware of any other Tajik architecture that is in the United States, but I could be wrong on that.
Fantastic. I think we have time for one more question if anybody has a question. All righty, I'm going to hand it off to Jancy. Thank you. Oh, you got it. Thanks, Jancy.
Okay. First of all, just a couple of little stories. When I challenge everyone that goes to the tea house to look on the back wall, and you'll see a tambourine. There's a little story behind that. We were taking what I call maybe like the Union Pacific, but it was a train ride, and it was close to the Afghanistan border. And on one side were all the Tajiks dancing. The other side were soldiers guarding Afghanistan. We did not know it was the beginning of that war. So as we went by on the train, the dancers passed that tambourine up through the window to us. And so we all took turns bringing it back.
Oh, isn't that
and
lovely?
One other story is, before I came here, we spent many a week, and this was Mary Axe and Oakley Thorne and Marsley Graylap, and trying to see how we could get the tea house here without paying duty. And we did figure it out. But anyhow, Leslie, thank you so much for being here today and talking to us about this beautiful tea house. And I believe that it is the only Central Asian tea house in our country. With your long career in human service, you have brought so much to Boulder. When you became mayor was just about the time that Tajikistan separated from the Soviet Union. It's rather interesting. Recognizing your many contributions, you, of course, were the recipient of our 2021 Peace Award. Well deserved.
Thank you, Jancy.
As you know, Rotary has been a main force in the eradication of polio throughout the world, and today we are so close. So in your honor and in your name, we are donating 100 doses of polio vaccine to that cause. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm touched. Well, thank you all. It's been great fun to be with you. And really, really hope that like many of us here, you will take the time to go see the tea house and really celebrate the beauty, the artistry, the caring that people from Tajikistan evidenced in their handwork and gave to the citizens of Boulder. It really is remarkable. Thank you.